the first scream didn't come from a fight, or a riot, or a cell search gone wrong. It came from a locked shower room, one place that should have been safe, and one place everyone on that unit already knew wasn't. For years, the women inside Rikers Island whispered the same truth: danger didn't always wear a jumpsuit. Sometimes, it wore a badge. On a humid summer night in the Rose M. Singer Center, the women's jail on Rikers, an inmate named Lena stood by the bars of her dorm, staring down the corridor where the scream had come from. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even breathe. Because she already knew what most new arrivals didn't: when you heard something like that, you kept your head down. If stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, because this one only gets darker. Lena had been on the island for 8 months. Long enough to learn the rhythms. Long enough to understand how the uniforms walked differently when they thought no one was watching. Long enough to feel the shift in the air whenever an officer hovered too long near certain cells. That night, the shift became unmistakable. Officer Rayburn, one of the guards whose name traveled in whispers, stepped out of the shower area, pulling the door shut behind him. His face was blank, too blank, the kind of expression that meant he'd already rehearsed what he'd say if anyone asked. No one would. 2 other officers stood down the hall, pretending to check logs. One of them glanced at Rayburn, then quickly looked away, as if eye contact alone was enough to get dragged into something he didn't want to be part of. Lena watched the whole thing. From her corner, behind the rusted bars, she saw the silent choreography: how the men avoided the cameras, how they positioned themselves in the blind spots they all pretended didn't exist. She knew what it meant. Everyone did. But on Rikers, knowing something and proving it were worlds apart. Minutes later, the shower door opened again, and a young inmate, Tasha, emerged trembling, wearing a towel she clutched like armor. She didn't speak. Didn't accuse. Didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her silence told the entire story. But silence was exactly what Rikers demanded. The next morning, Tasha was gone. Not released, just moved. Quietly. Without explanation. The kind of transfer that happened when someone complained, or when someone was about to. The kind of transfer meant to send a message. Lena noticed her bed stripped bare before breakfast. Her personal items bagged and removed. Her name wiped off the board. When Lena asked another inmate what happened, the woman didn't even look up from her tray. She said something, she murmured. "And when you talk here, they make sure you learn not to try again." That was the moment Lena understood the truth she'd been avoiding: the system wasn't broken. It was functioning exactly as intended. And later that night, when an envelope slid under her door, no return name, no handwriting she recognized, she stared at it for a long, frozen minute. Inside was a note, just 5 words long. "You're next if you talk." The real descent began right there. The note didn't scare Lena at first. It angered her. Rikers had taken enough from her already: her routines, her confidence, her sleep, her sense of safety. Fear was the one thing she had promised herself she wouldn't hand over. But promises don't mean much on an island built on silence. Within hours, the shift in behavior began. Officer Rayburn passed her cell twice as often, not saying a word, just letting his keys jingle loud enough to remind her he knew exactly where she slept. Another officer, Serrano, suddenly became strict about minor infractions: late to chow, unsnapped laundry bag, a book left on her bunk. Each violation earned a write-up. Each write-up built a paper trail that could justify moving her somewhere nobody would hear her. Lena recognized the pattern. She'd seen it before. And as the pressure mounted, the women around her grew colder. Not because they didn't care, but because they couldn't afford to. On Rikers, compassion was currency you couldn't spend. Speaking up for someone else was a fast way to get targeted yourself. Still, one inmate didn't fall in line. Serena, older, sharper, serving a long stretch, approached Lena in the day room one afternoon, speaking without looking at her. "You heard the scream," Serena said. "And you didn't look away. That puts you on a list." Lena stayed quiet. Serena continued, "You think Rayburn acts alone? You think the blind spots are accidents? You think these transfers just happen?" She let out a humorless laugh. "Girl, this place was designed to swallow complaints." Lena asked the question she'd been avoiding. "What happened to Tasha?" Serena leaned back, voice barely above a whisper. "She reported him. Went to the clinic, asked for a forensic exam. They moved her before it could happen. Threw a couple tickets on her record so they could bury anything she said under disciplinary issues. And now? No one knows where she ended up." Lena felt a tightening in her chest, anger mixed with a sharp, unfamiliar dread. But Serena wasn't finished. "There's a system here," she said. "Not written down, but real. Officers who do it. Officers who cover it. Officers who look away. The ones who try to break the chain. They get pushed out, or worse." The word worse hung in the air like humidity. That night, the unit dimmed for lockdown, and Lena lay awake staring at the ceiling. The hum of the fluorescent lights had a way of turning thoughts into noise. She replayed the scream. The blank looks. The silent transfer. And the note. Somewhere down the corridor, metal slammed against metal. Someone cursed. Someone else cried softly into their pillow. The island breathed in these sounds, feeding off them. Just after midnight, footsteps approached her door. Keys rattled. A flashlight beam swept across her face. Rayburn. He didn't open the cell. He didn't need to. He leaned close to the bars, voice low, steady. "People who mind their business get home sooner." Then he smiled. A small, confident smile. The kind a man wears when he knows the system is built to protect him. As he walked away, something caught Lena's eye, a small folded paper left on the floor just outside her bars. She reached for it with trembling fingers. This time, the message was different. "There's someone who can help you. But talking to her will cost you everything." And underneath, a name she hadn't heard in months. Sergeant Molina. A guard. One who wasn't supposed to intervene. One rumored to be the only officer on that unit willing to break ranks. But going to her meant stepping into a war Lena didn't start and couldn't control. And someone clearly wanted her to try. Sergeant Molina didn't look like the kind of officer anyone whispered about. She carried herself with a calm authority, rare on a unit where most staff relied on fear instead of respect. She didn't joke with the other officers. She didn't linger in blind spots. She walked her rounds like someone who remembered that every door she opened had a human being behind it. That was exactly why the inmates trusted her. And exactly why some officers hated her. Lena approached her during morning medline. Her hands were steady, but inside, every instinct screamed at her to turn back. Talking to staff, any staff, was a risk. Talking to one who didn't play by the unspoken rules was even worse. Molina paused when she noticed Lena hesitating. "You need something?" she asked, voice low but firm. Lena didn't answer with words. She slipped the folded note into Molina's palm. For a moment, the sergeant didn't react. Then her jaw tightened, just slightly, but enough to show she understood exactly what this meant. "Meet me in the clinic hallway after lunch," Molina whispered. "Walk in alone. If anyone follows you, don't stop." The rest of the morning moved like thick air, slow, heavy, suffocating. Lena felt eyes on her the entire time. Rayburn watched from the officer's station, tapping his pen against a clipboard as if counting the minutes until she made a mistake. When lunch ended, Lena moved through the corridor toward the clinic. Every footstep echoed louder than it should have. Every shadow felt longer. At the corner, she saw Serrano, one of Rayburn's closest allies, speaking into his radio while staring in her direction. She didn't break pace. Didn't look away. Didn't give him the satisfaction of fear. The clinic hallway was cooler and quieter, tucked away from the main dorms. Melina stood with her arms crossed, waiting. "Talk," she said. Lena told her everything, but without details that would reopen wounds. She described the pattern. The blind spots. The retaliation. The transfers that silenced victims before they could be heard. She mentioned the scream. And Tasha. And the note. Melina listened without interruption. When Lena finished, the sergeant exhaled slowly. "You're not the first to come to me," Melina said. "But if you're willing, you might be the one who breaks this open." Lena's heartbeat quickened. She hadn't expected that answer. Melina continued, "There's a federal monitor reviewing Rikers. If what you're saying is accurate, they'll act. But once you speak, there's no going back. They'll come for you in ways that don't leave bruises. Retaliation disguised as discipline. Transfers justified by paperwork. Privileges revoked for attitude. Silence demanded by fear." Lena swallowed hard. "If I don't talk, who's next?" Melina nodded. That was the only answer she needed. Within 48 hours, Lena was interviewed, not by officers, but by outside investigators. She told them everything she could safely share. No one promised her protection. No one guaranteed justice. But for the first time since arriving on the island, she felt the weight inside her shift, even if just slightly. A week later, Rayburn was quietly reassigned pending review. Serrano was placed under investigation. And the federal monitor demanded full access to the women's units. None of this erased what had happened. None of it made the jail safer overnight. But it made one thing clear: someone had finally pierced the silence. Before she was moved for her own safety, Lena stopped by her old dorm. The bed where Tasha once slept was still empty. The women sat in uneasy quiet, watching her. Serena approached, arms folded. "You really did it, huh?" Lena didn't feel brave. She didn't feel victorious. She just felt honest. "I couldn't stay part of the silence," she said. Serena nodded. "Then maybe things change. Not fast. Not easy. But maybe." As officers prepared to escort her to a different unit, Lena looked down the long corridor, the one filled with echoes, secrets, and stories most people never hear. And for the first time, she didn't look away. If you think this story was intense, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe for more true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.